Readers, I'm still thinking about my grandpa. Yesterday I told you about that moment when my stern, tough grandpa took my grandma's arm so gently and walked her ever so slowly to the kitchen. And we talked about how there are moments when people in our lives do things that catch us by surprise, that reveal new sides of them, deeper parts of them. Today I want to make a different point about my grandpa and see if this rings true for you. When I walked into our house, I knew he was there even before I saw him. He has a distinctive smell. This might sound disrespectful, but it's not a bad smell. It's a smell of fresh cut grass and motor oil, all rolled in together. He's always working on the lawn, in the garage. Anyhow, my point is that I get one whiff of that smell and I know Grandpa's around. There are other people in my life who have other distinctive trademarks. Like I have this friend who laughs in a huge, hearty guff. I hear that laughter, and in my mind, she's right there. With some people, it's a phrase that a person says all the time. My sister says I need to go to the facilities instead of I need to use a bathroom. And I hear that phrase, the facilities, and I think of my sister. It's her trademark phrase, as surely as the apple with a bite out of it is an apple's trademark. I'm telling you this because authors have trademarks too. Today, I want to teach you that once you get to know an author well, you come to recognize that author's trademarks, the author's distinctive style of writing. More specifically, you recognize the author's way of bringing a character to life. I think we've read enough of Matt De La Pena that we're beginning to recognize his distinctive style. Let's zoom in one revealing moment and think of the style with which Matt has written that moment. Let's reread this and think, what do we notice about the way Matt has written this one moment? How is the way he has told this moment similar to the way he has told other moments? And what might be his distinctive style? Let's go back to the part where the narrator goes to the library to do a Google search on Mooney Jim. Proceed instead to the local library and look up Mooney Jim online. Type the address into Google Earth and you'll discover it's right next to the Air and Space Museum your moms took you and your sis to back in the day. And the Air and Space Museum, if your calculations are correct, is about 5 miles from your pop's job at the factory. So this time we aren't going to focus on what this shows about the narrator, how smart and industrious he is. Instead, we're trying to notice something about Matt's writing style. What does he do here that he does in other moments too? Well, for starters, this is really told in a bit by bit way, isn't it? Proceed instead to the local library. Type the address. He could have just said, I searched the location on Google Earth and learned that it wasn't far from Pop's job. But instead, he shows the character's step by step actions. Do you see how I name what Matt is doing and I even pop out what I'm noticing about what he did do by thinking about what he could have done instead? Can you try that same way of thinking and see if you can notice even more about what Matt is doing in recreating this moment? I'm going to reread the passage again, and then I want you to think, what are other aspects of Matt's style that are as distinctive to him as his grandpa's smell is to him? Proceed instead to the local library and look up Mooney Jim online. Type the address into Google Earth and you'll discover it's right next to the Air and Space Museum your moms took you and your sis to back in the day. And the Air and Space Museum, if your calculations are correct, isn't but 5 miles from your pop's job at the factory. So, readers, you probably noticed a few different techniques that this author uses. He gets inside the head of the narrator and says what the character is thinking. He uses a lot of internal dialogue. The way the dialogue sounds, spoken or internal, shows what the character is like. You might also have noticed that the sentences aren't always written as whole sentences. This is another one of his techniques. I want to pause really quick and remind you of two really important tips. I'm hoping that these are things that you did when you did this work of analyzing Matt's style. The first thing is to remember to cite the text, and the next thing is to push yourself to notice even more. These are two things that you can do every time you're thinking about the author's style and the techniques that the author uses. That you're going back into the text and citing evidence, and always push yourself to notice even more and more. So, readers, you see that when you read a bunch of text by an author or one long novel by an author, you begin to notice that author's distinctive style. You notice the techniques the author uses over and over. And because you're becoming expert at this, you are probably realizing that there are styles that authors use for different things. Like today, we just zoomed in on studying the style that Mark de la Pina uses to create moments that reveal his characters. We could have looked at his style for starting stories or for creating a setting. But in this unit, we are especially focused on characters and on how an author brings characters to life. You could continue your reading now, this time noticing not only the moments that reveal characters' deeper sides, but also noticing your author's distinctive style. But I want to give you one more added thing to be thinking about as you read. This is a chart that you've probably used to get better at talking about and thinking about the techniques authors use when writing fiction. You'll see that some of the things we've just discussed are on here. I want to suggest that each of you might remake this chart. And I'm thinking that you might want to make your chart using the trademark techniques that your particular author uses to bring characters to life. As you study your particular author's techniques, will you think about which of these techniques should be on a chart of your author's techniques and which shouldn't be? Some of the techniques also seem to sort of overlap, so you might throw some out for that reason. Or for sure, there will be new techniques that you want to add. So you'll want to rename the chart based on your author's name. So, for example, if I were creating one for Matt de la Pina, this is what my title might look like. So, as you read today, be thinking about what might go on to your chart. Starting today and over the next few days, you'll be creating your own version of this chart for the author that you are studying. You'll want to think of which ideas you'll use to create the best possible chart. Find a clean page in your reading notebook, add your title, and off you go.